Sudan's cabinet on Tuesday voted to ratify the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in what will be seen as a step closer to having suspects of crimes against humanity in Darfur region, including former President Omar al Bashir, tried in the Hague-based court. The United States Agency for International Development, USAID chief Samantha Power, in a tweet, welcomed the vote, terming it a revolution for freedom, peace and justice. The bill now awaits ratification by the joint session of Sudan's ruling Sovereign Council. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok said on Twitter that Cabinet had unanimously passed a bill to join the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. For 2 years, the country has been ruled by a transitional civilian military administration, which amongst others promised a return to democracy and that those who committed war crimes in the Darfur region will be tried at the ICC. Referring to the revolution that removed President al-Bashir from power, the head of USAID, Samantha Power, who is on a visit to Sudan, termed the decision as big news, saying it was a step towards ending impunity. Prime Minister Hamdok further said they would hold a joint council meeting to vote the decision into law. Bashir is wanted by the ICC to face trial on charges of genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity. He is currently being held in Kober High Security Prison in the capital Khartoum alongside his aides, also wanted by the ICC. The United Nations estimates that 300,000 people were killed and more than 2 million displaced in the Darfur conflict. Human rights groups have long accused Bashir of fomenting the conflict. And just to take the story further, we're now joined by SABC International News Editor Sophie Mokoena. A very good morning to you. What does this mean?
Well, clearly it means that if you can close the fader, it means that the al-Bashir himself can now be handed over to the International Criminal Court. But that will take time because Sudan will have to discuss this extensively because they wouldn't want those who support al-Bashir to come back and perhaps stage protests, and that will end up in dividing Sudan again because that peace is very, very fragile. We know that the military is in charge and the civilians on the ground are restless also because they want a government. Therefore, the peace is not as strong as it is perceived. And therefore, when you deal with al-Bashir, you have to be very, very careful. Secondly, remember, he was not the only one involved in that problem. He was involved with other people or other generals, and therefore those generals will have to be taken to the Hague as well. And some of them are currently holding high positions in Sudan, and therefore it is not a clear cut to say you can take al-Bashir now to the International Criminal Court. What is the current leader doing is trying to appease the international community so that the issue of sanctions and the trade and investment between Khartoum and international community is revived. You know that he went to America where he made a commitment to revive the relations with Israel, much to the horror of some of the Middle East countries. But he took that decision because he wanted America to remove the sanctions. And therefore, all these different moves, the intention is to create a relationship with the international community because he's a dubious character. He's a former army general who was part of al-Bashir's mess.
Of course, there is that pending warrant of arrest against Omar al Bashir. Will Sudan hand him over?
I don't think they will for now, but that's the intention. And they are hoping perhaps they will find a political solution because it will lead to other challenges on the continent. Because remember, the issue of refusing to hand over al-Bashir was not only an issue that affected the country, but the continent as a whole. The continent rallied behind al-Bashir, people questioning the role of the International Criminal Court in terms of how it is executing its responsibilities. And therefore, when you hand him over, you must take that into consideration.
What will that mean for the AU that has always questioned the ICC?
Yes, this flies on the face of the AU because now they will have to retract and perhaps to rescind that decision of questioning the decision by the international warrant of arrest, because it means when Sudan is joining the International Criminal Court, it will have to abide or implement that warrant of arrest, and therefore there's nothing that they can do. This is a decision by a country, particularly if Sudan wants to domesticate this training of the International Criminal Court. It becomes a domestic affair, and therefore African countries can't interfere in domestic affairs of other countries.
Mokoena is the SABC News international editor.